The way my life is going, the situation I'm in, and the risks I'm taking in my marriage all come down to the words he said to me on that fateful day. It's just business. That's how I have to look at it. The way things are now. My husband, the love of my life, knew nothing about the agreement I made, the deal I made with the devil, the deal I made with a man I didn't really love as a person. Yes, he is a handsome and strong man, but at the same time he is arrogant, cocky, vain, and pompous. He is also my longtime lover, and I suppose I must somehow love him. I certainly like what he does to me, and has done for me for that matter. Why did I agree to do this? Why do I keep doing this? Years of lies, subterfuge, and deception. All for what? Great sex. Definitely a yes. The adrenaline rush of being at the mercy of my powerful lover. Yes, of course. The feeling of pride that I was able to keep an innocent husband and family in the dark for so long, you can be sure. What amazes me is that I deal with it with a clear conscience. In fact, I enjoy it. I really don't want to stop now. It's part of my life, and it means so much to me. This started so long ago. I must stress that I do not let this affect my husband. As I have already said, he is and always will be the love of my life. My children are very important to me, although my husband does most of the work with them, taking care of them and raising them and such. You see, I'm too busy with work. I love them. Of course I do. And I will protect them above all others, even myself. What my lover gives me is necessary, an important part of my life, but make no mistake, I need my husband and family much more. If I ever had to choose, there is no doubt who and what I would give up. I would certainly miss it. But as long as I don't have to choose, I will continue. So why am I risking something that is so important to me? To explain, I have to go back to my school and university days, the happy, carefree, simple days when I had my fair share of random guys, nothing heavy, just fun evenings generally. I gave my virginity to my first real boyfriend at the end of my senior year. We had fun together. The illicit sex we had and the danger of being caught by our parents only added to the thrill. We both knew there was no future in our relationship. We were both heading to different universities. So when the time came, we ended things amicably. During my first 2 years at university, I didn't want to get too serious with anyone. A few dates did end up in bed, but it was just fun, part of the learning process. I had a couple of steady boyfriends, but none of them lasted more than half a semester. I didn't like any of them. They were good guys, kind and respectful. The sex was okay, of course. Nothing like what I was to experience later, but at the time, I liked it. That all changed early in my senior year when John and I first met at a party. There was an instant attraction between us. Physically, he was my ideal man. He looked handsome and spoke to me as an equal and not as a potential conquest for a night out. We danced, and the way he held me made me feel like I truly belonged to him, safe in his arms. When the party ended, I readily agreed to a follow-up date with him. We met regularly and soon became exclusive. It was obvious that there was something special between us. He respected me for my intelligence, accepted my desire to be the best. We had a similar sense of humor, we enjoyed each other's company, and as our relationship progressed, we discovered that we were more than compatible in bed. He rocked my world, and I think I did the same for him. He was an attentive lover and knew what turned me on, so he made sure my needs were met every time we made love. However, I'm getting ahead of myself in my story. I was on a 4-year course where I had to work in the 3rd year. The university helped us with employment, helped us find companies that could provide training in addition to our curriculum. I was lucky to find a place that wasn't too far from campus, so I could stay in the house I shared with the girls I lived with for my first 2 years. I first met Grant for an interview. His sister Natalie interviewed me first, and then introduced me to him so that he would agree to hire me. He didn't say much, just told me about the company and what they do, explaining that he and Natalie jointly inherited the company from their father. When he spoke to me, there was an expression in his eyes that I found slightly frightening, an expression that I could not fully understand. I was used to men mentally undressing me, as I'm sure most women were, but this was something more. He seemed to be looking not just at my body through my clothes, but straight into my soul. It sent shivers down my spine as I forced myself to remain calm and meet his penetrating gaze. The meaning of this view became clear to me only many years later, and it lies at the heart of my story. At that moment, however, I was pleasantly surprised when, after looking at me silently for a long time, he turned his attention to his sister to tell her that he was pleased with her choice. From my first day, Natalie took me under her wing and was kind to me, making sure the work I was assigned was meaningful and beneficial to my education. She made sure I understood what I was doing and why I was part of the team, and the others welcomed me. The work was hard but rewarding, and I learned a lot. Grant was the figurehead of the company, the salesman, if you will. He traveled regularly to implement the proposals that we had prepared in the office. He was always very professional in his interactions with us employees in the office, but I had little direct interaction with him. Shortly after I started working there, we were rewarded with a team lunch. After our meal, we continued dancing. The treat was to celebrate success in winning a lucrative contract, and although I had little to contribute, I was invited to join them, as in all subsequent cases. During the first outing, the men on the team flirted with me, and to some extent I tried my best. It was all good, harmless fun. Since all the men except one were married, I made it clear that it was just fun. I had no interest in pursuing anything further with any of them. Grant seemed somewhat distant from us, with the possible exception of Cindy, who was about 5 years older than me. I thought I saw a look pass between them, a brief, intimate exchange that no one else seemed to see. I knew she was married because she told me about her husband and children over dinner one day, so I was a little surprised by what I thought I saw. Apart from this brief interaction, nothing else seems to be wrong. The rest of the team, including Cindy and Grant, seemed at ease with each other and regularly swapped dance partners. Perhaps I was mistaken, reading too much into the very short conversation between them. My chance to become Grant's partner came quite late, and it was just one dance. He was a true gentleman throughout my short stay with him and smiled as he thanked me for being a good partner. After that first meeting, I noticed that guys stopped flirting with me. They laughed and joked with me, but the sexual overtones disappeared. Many years later, I learned that Grant had made it clear to them that they needed to leave me alone. We got together every couple of months. Everyone enjoyed every occasion, and I didn't see anything else between Cindy and Grant, so maybe I was imagining it after all. Whenever it was my turn to slow dance with Grant, he would hold me tightly to him. And although I didn't really get attached to the man, I enjoyed dancing with him. He had a way of carrying himself, a posture that made him feel strong, in control, even dominant. I respected him and I felt safe with him. While we were together, he seemed to focus on me, on my pleasure, yet he was always a gentleman. Over time, I began to feel slightly disappointed that he did not take any liberties with me. His hands never moved away, and he did not press against me inappropriately. I'm not sure how I would have handled it if he had, although I convinced myself that he was well behaved. I lived with my student friends not far from the university, so I met them most weekends. Of course, sometimes I liked the company of men, but, as in previous years, nothing permanent or serious. When my friends went home during the Christmas holidays, I had to work, so I was left at home alone, and of course there was an office Christmas party coming up. I splashed out on the new dress and decided in advance to let my hair down. Tom, the only single guy on the team, agreed to accompany me, and we sat with 3 others from our team who were with their partners. We had a great time. One thing I noticed was that, although Cindy was with her husband, I saw her sneak out of the room alone, and Grant followed her a few minutes later. Cindy's husband sat laughing with the other members of our team and seemed oblivious to his wife's absence. I saw Grant come back into the room about 20 minutes later. Cindy was still missing. I didn't actually see her come back, but the next thing I noticed was that she was back in her seat at the table. Of course, I had a couple of dances with Grant, and I was pleased when he complimented me on my dress. We'd both had a little to drink by then, and I'll admit, I snuggled up to him maybe a little closer than usual. I was impressed by what I briefly felt between us. However, he seemed slightly embarrassed by this and gently moved me away from his body with a smile. At the next song, he tapped Tom on the shoulder to switch partners. I felt a pang of disappointment at what felt like a rejection, so I pressed seductively into Tom, who didn't seem to mind. At the end of the evening, Tom called a taxi and drove with me to my den. Asking the driver to wait, he walked me to my door. We were both drinking and were quite cheerful, so I pulled him towards me to press my lips to his. He kissed back with some passion until we pulled away from each other, and I breathlessly invited him in. We both knew what I was offering, so imagine my surprise when he refused, whispering, "Thank you. You're great, but I can't." Before I could ask why or even say anything else, he returned to the waiting taxi and drove off. Monday morning, nothing was said. Tom greeted me with a smile and told me how much he enjoyed my company. It was too public for me to ask about his sudden departure, so I just smiled and walked to my desk. Grant arrived about 5 minutes later and asked me to join him in his office. This was unusual. I followed him and took the offered place when he took off his jacket. "Did you have a good time on Saturday night?" I answered in the affirmative. He smiled and continued. "Well, I enjoyed dancing with you. You looked great. Young Tom behaved well and brought you home safe and sound." Once again, my answer was positive. "I am glad to hear it." We then talked about the work I was doing, whether I liked it, whether it was something I was interested in, and things like that. Once he listened to my answers, he seemed a little distracted, then looked at his computer. "I would like to discuss your successes and plans for the future in the new year. When we get back, we'll do something. Maybe have an informal meeting somewhere." Then he paused and looked thoughtful for a long time, and then said, "Okay, that's all for now. Have a good rest." That's it. I was sent. As I was leaving his office, Cindy walked past me to enter his office. She looked a little tense, and I noticed that she had closed the door tightly behind her. I was too busy to notice when the door opened, but the next time I saw it, Cindy had returned to her desk and looked much more relaxed than when she walked past me into the office. Later that day, I mentioned to Natalie about my meeting with Grant and that Grant wanted to talk to me later. She smiled. "That's good. He likes you. We both think you'll fit in well with us. You and I will talk again, too." I went home to my family for Christmas, staying until the new year. It was nice to be home with my parents and see old friends. I met my old boyfriend and his new partner. He seemed happy enough. When I returned to work, I was relaxed and engaged in work like the rest of the team. Over time, I was able to offer more and really enjoyed the opportunity to expand my experience. One of my concerns was that Grant seemed a little more distant towards me and the rest of the team. He seemed distracted at times and barely spoke to me. In particular, he did not mention our meeting later. We met as a team a couple more times, and I danced with Grant, but for some reason, everything was different. Time seemed to fly by, and my secondment was coming to an end when Grant called me into his office one Monday morning. "Are you free on Friday evening?" I told him yes. "Okay. I'll pick you up at 7 o'clock. We can talk about your future, get dressed for food, and maybe we'll dance a little." I nodded in agreement before he added, "Okay, now I think Natalie would like to see you in the conference room." Natalie told me that they were pleased with my work and impressed with my work ethic. She handed me a sealed envelope, which she said contained the university assessment forms she had filled out for me, as well as a letter to my course instructor. When she stood up to announce the end of our meeting, she asked, "Has Grant made an appointment with you this week?" I said, "Yes, he did it." "Okay, I know he has an offer for you." Her comment got me thinking, what kind of sentence is this? Why after work, in a restaurant, at a dance? I wasn't interested in a relationship with him after all. I didn't really like him, of course, in that sense. And from his reaction when we danced, I was sure that the feeling was mutual. The week seemed to last forever as I puzzled over what would happen at our meeting. Friday came and he was out of the office all day, so I couldn't gauge his mood. It was a rush, but I was ready at the appointed time. I wore a modest, little black dress. It wasn't too short and showed just a decent amount of cleavage. My favorite heels and new underwear completed my outfit. He knocked on my door just in time and led me to his car. Imagine my surprise when I saw Natalie there and another man I had never met before. Grant held the front passenger door open for me, and as I slid into the seat, Natalie introduced me to her husband. Ralph smiled and said, "Hello, nice to finally meet you." Soon we were sitting in a cozy restaurant with a drink in our hands. Grant spoke first. "Thank you for joining us this evening. Natalie and I want to discuss your future, particularly where it could be mutually beneficial. We thought an informal conversation in a relaxed atmosphere would be best." Once our food was ordered, Natalie said that they both thought I would fit in well and that, provided I got the degree I was supposed to, I should talk to them about a permanent position immediately after graduation. They handed me a draft employment contract that detailed the remuneration package they were willing to offer. It was better than I expected. Then, when I finished reading, Grant smiled and added, "We are very interested in your services, so please read this." He handed me a piece of paper. "This is a preliminary offer, an advance, if you will, to help you get through next year." Natalie took the floor. "We hope this will put us in an advantageous position for your future services." I was speechless. They were going to give me a weekly allowance that would cover my living expenses for the next school year. I think my mouth must have been slightly open when she continued. "There are no strings attached to our offer. You are free to live your life as you see fit. We just hope you continue to work hard and then call us first when you graduate." What could I say? My smile must have given me away. Maybe even the tears in my eyes gave them a clue. Grant saved me. Enough business talk for today. Let's enjoy the food and the rest of the evening. What could I say? I managed to thank them and promised not to let them down. The food was wonderful, and we danced until late. They dropped me off at midnight. Grant walked me to my door, and although I was hesitant, I kissed him on the cheek as I thought it was just polite. He didn't seem to mind too much. It took me a couple of weeks to get back into the routine of university life, and I had to get used to a couple of new roommates. However, it was during the usual round of freshman parties that I met my future husband. We were the same age, and he was also about to start his senior year. He had a 3-year course, but he had a year to travel after school, so now he's caught up with me after I've been for 4 years. As I mentioned earlier, we quickly realized that we were made for each other and were soon making plans for our future life together. We agreed that once we each had a suitable career, we would get married. Of course, I was ahead in achieving this goal, but he was smart, so I knew it wouldn't be long before we could move forward with our lives. Despite wanting to spend as much time with each other as possible, we both worked hard and got the good degrees we needed. Upon graduation, I immediately accepted Natalie and Grant's offer, while John soon found the job he wanted. We opened a savings account together and planned our wedding for June. My job was what I expected. I had a few things to learn, but I fit right into the team as if I had never left. As before, Natalie was friendly and helpful. Grant, not so much. He was the same as I remembered. Aloof at times, abrupt, sometimes even rude, but overall he was businesslike and very professional. We had our occasional holiday nights, and my feelings for Grant remained the same. I had my turn to dance with him, and he kept me at arm's length, especially during the slow dances. I don't know why, but it irritated me a little, although I didn't really like him, but I found his attitude, his demeanor, very attractive. As I said, he felt strong, powerful, even charismatic. All I knew was that when I was in his arms, my body responded to him, even if my mind didn't want it to. It was a strange feeling. I certainly didn't have any romantic feelings for him, and I had no intention of getting close to him. The work became more and more interesting. Natalie took me around the company as part of my training. I learned a lot, but I wondered where my future workplace was. It seemed that as soon as I found out what I was doing at a particular job, she translated me to the next one. One day I asked for a meeting to discuss this. She explained that with my education I could handle any job, so she wanted me to get a thorough understanding of the entire company, and then when the time came, I would be promoted according to my knowledge and position. One of the issues I needed to discuss was that, as a young married woman, I would soon want to have children. Natalie smiled and said, "Of course you will, and I want to assure you that we will support you in everything." I wondered how it was possible that I would need to take time off, maybe even resign, to take care of any children we might have. She brushed it off with, "I'm sure your husband will support you if you decide to stay at work. We will make sure you get help." And so, when 18 months later I told Natalie that I was pregnant, she transferred me to our accounting department. I had previously worked there, so I knew what was needed. For the next 5 months, I was remote, with a home office, a computer connected to the company server, and the task of modifying our financial systems to cope with remote management. I was encouraged to work from home to check systems if I had a busy day or a clinic visit. My son Aaron was born without complications, and Natalie took a break for the first few weeks, while I breastfed and adjusted to the routine of a new mother. In fact, she visited me regularly, often working in my home office all day. Once things got better for me and John got used to being a hands-on dad, I had to go to the office 1 day a week. We developed a procedure to do this, and all was well in my world. The days at the office gradually increased, and we hired an au pair to help with the baby. I soon became pregnant again, and, following a similar procedure, eventually became the proud mother of a healthy daughter, Sophie. John and I decided that 2 kids was enough for us, so I went back on birth control, and John had a vasectomy. When I mentioned this to Natalie one day in conversation, she seemed pleased, but did not say anything significant about it. After 6 months, I was promoted to a management position, and what was strange was that I continued to move around the business, now heading every department in which I worked. I was now in management meetings with Natalie and Grant, where we discussed strategy and plans. Then, a year after Sophie was born, my life took a completely unexpected turn. "We have an important matter to discuss with you, and we would like to do so without delay. Please, after work today, I expect this will take at least a couple of hours, so apologize to John and join us in the meeting room in half an hour, please." Natalie said a little more formally than she usually spoke to me. When I arrived, Grant was already there, sitting in a chair in the corner of the room. He pointed to the sofa and invited me to sit. Natalie joined me and sat in another chair. "Coffee for everyone?" Once we had sorted out our drinks, Grant dropped the bomb. "I want to leave the company. I won't retire, but I won't be so involved in the day-to-day business." I opened my mouth to ask the many questions that flooded my mind. I worked in all areas of the business except part of it, and no one else replaced it. He was unique in the company, and as far as I could tell, he was the key to its success, and perhaps even its survival. Before I could say anything, Natalie began, "We want you to take on the role of Grant. You know how our company works. You are smart, enthusiastic, and, most importantly, loyal." I must have looked shocked. At that moment, of course, I couldn't find the words. Grant took the floor. "I'm not going to leave completely just yet. I'll obviously need to pass on my knowledge, train you if you want. I'll spend up to 2 years introducing you to what I do and passing on my various contacts. I know that you can handle this job. You are perfect for it, but there is one condition." Then Natalie interrupted him. "You, of course, will become a director and will have the title of vice president. Your salary and benefits will increase accordingly. If your training period is completed successfully, you will receive a number of shares in the company, becoming co-owners along with Grant and me." She slid a document across the table to me that outlined the details of the offer, and I was amazed at what they thought I was worth. "I'll leave you now to discuss this with Grant." With these words, she took her purse and left. "And what do you think?" Grant intervened. "Are you excited about the prospect of being with me?" I immediately thought that was a strange thing to say, especially when I saw a teasing expression on his face that I hadn't seen before, perhaps a slight smile on his lips. As soon as I noticed this, he again became the Grant I always knew. "John will need to be on board because there will be times when you will need to travel with me." "Well," I began. "Wait, there is one condition, an important consideration, which, I'm afraid, is not negotiable." With that, he stood up and sat next to me on the plush leather sofa. He looked me straight in the eyes and said, "There is a price to pay for my skill and mentorship." He brought his face close to mine then spoke words that sent a shockwave right through me. "I'm going to have sex with you." Wow, I was caught off guard, completely stunned. I wondered if I had heard him correctly. My jaw must have dropped because before I could react, his lips met mine, his large hand holding my head in place as he stunned me with a passionate kiss. Holding my breath, I tried to resist. I put my hands on his chest, pushing away, but he was too strong. His other hand caressed my chest. I was losing the battle. I felt how my whole body was reacting, despite the objections of my rational mind. His eyes were locked on mine as he continued to kiss me. He caught my hand when I tried to slap him. Then when he broke the kiss, I screamed at him. "You arrogant pig! How dare you do this to me? Who do you think you are?" I tried my best to pull my hands away from his as I continued my tirade. "Leave me alone! Let me go! You know that I am a married woman." His burst of laughter interrupted me. "Yes, I know that you are married. I hope you are happy. That's the thing. You understand. I only need you as a married woman. For this to work, you must be married." His answer stunned me. He emphasized should, and now I also paid attention to him. I've always struggled with relationships. All the attractive women I meet are either married or gold-digging. The last group is of no use to me, but the destruction of a happy marriage is more attractive to you, isn't it? I was indignant, rising to my feet. You take pleasure in destroying families, causing suffering and disappointment, don't you? Standing and looking down at him as I finished my statement, I noticed that he was smiling at me, waiting for me, looking annoyingly calm. "You misunderstood me. I am not interested in ending your marriage. I want you to return home to your family. It is important to me that you remain in love with your husband, as I don't need your emotional attachment. I definitely don't want you to fall in love with me. I just want my basic needs met." He stood facing me. "I find you extremely attractive. You are beautiful, very smart, and, most importantly, ambitious." His hands were now on my hips. "I wanted to have sex with you from the first day I met you, but you were single. Now you want my job. The time has come, and all I want in return is you." "Why now?" I interrupted him. "Why did you wait until I had a husband and children?" "That's the whole point, don't you understand?" He gently brushed a stray strand of hair from my face. "My needs are simple. I don't want anything related to a permanent relationship. I just want you to satisfy my carnal need, and do it regularly. But I don't even like you. You're rude. The whole time I've known you, you've kept me at arm's length, shown no interest in me as a woman. I just don't understand it. Why the hell should I agree to your condition?" The annoying smile returned. "Because you are ambitious. You want this job. You need the power that it will give. Prestige is important to you. The whole package worries you a lot. I see it, and you know it. Oh, and perhaps most importantly, sex with me will be good. I'm sure you'll enjoy it." He was right. Well, at least partially. I really wanted this job. I really wanted it, but could I have sex with this man to get it? My thoughts went back to the times I danced with him, his powerful presence, the confident touch as he held me, the feeling of dominance as we swayed to the music. Then the kiss, just now. My body wanted it, betrayed by my own involuntary reaction. I wondered if it would be so bad. How this happened, I can't remember everything now. My thoughts were interrupted by him kissing me again. He pulled me towards him and pressed his lips to mine. There was an unconscious decision on my part to wrap my arms around his neck. When I kissed him back, he lifted me off my feet, holding me tightly to your solid body. I felt his hands move to my back, and I gave in to his passion. He moved me toward the boardroom table, his hands sliding up my thighs, taking the hem of my dress with him, the cold wood now pressing against the back of my bare thighs. He took a step away from me, his eyes roaming over me as I tried to catch my breath. I looked at the door. Could I get to it and escape? Did I even want this? While I was thinking about this, he spoke again. "I won't stop you if you decide to leave. It's your choice, the promotion you deserve, the promotion you want, and all you have to do is, well, I told you what I want. For this, What is my condition? Remember that this is just a business. Now everything depends on you. Undressing will not only fulfill my dreams, but will also confirm your agreement with my proposal. But I also promise not to disappoint you, under any circumstances. Our eyes met as my mind reeled, trying to resolve my dilemma. Then he asked, "So what? What did I want? I worked hard. I deserve a promotion, didn't I? Could I have deceived John, my love, the man of my dreams, my dear John? Would submitting to this arrogant man really be that bad? Could this job be worth the risk I would take? How would I hide this from my family? Did I want this?" All the while my mind was pondering these questions, my body was making a choice. Involuntarily, my shaking hands unzipped the dress. Finally, realizing what I was already doing, I quietly said, "You leave me no choice. But you know that, don't you? I should hate you. I should really tell you to just fuck off and do your job. Let you know I don't need this. You really enjoy this. You think you deserve it. You believe you can get everything you want. I despise you." Even as I spoke, I surrendered completely, exposing my chest to his gaze, his eyes widening in appreciation. All this time, I looked back at him with what I hoped was a challenging look. Now naked, I stood there for a moment. I didn't watch him take off his clothes. "I take it that you're interested in my proposal?" He leaned over me. "Tell me what you want, what you agreed to." "Come on, you can say it." "I want your job, okay? I agree to your terms. Take me." I held him tightly, my body shaking, my arms and legs wrapped around his body, pulling his full weight towards me. When our breathing eventually returned to normal, he rolled off me. He began to get dressed as I lay brazenly naked in front of him. Finally, he broke the silence. "Put on your dress. We need to discuss more details, but not here." Without protesting, I obediently obeyed. As soon as I put on my dress and shoes, he led me out of the office and took me to his car. I looked questioningly. He knew what I wanted. "To my apartment. It's not far. I hope you bought us enough time." His apartment was expensively furnished. I only glanced briefly as we hurried to his bedroom. Once again, the man's power took complete control of me, and soon I was lost in the oblivion of lust. This was not lovemaking that I shared with John, but instead, it was unbridled passion. Two people lost in desire, desperate to touch, feel, and taste every part of each other. Once I calmed down, he took me to the bathroom where I showered. He handed me some underwear and I quickly got dressed. "Discuss everything with your husband over the weekend. Make sure travel is not an issue, and we will discuss everything in more detail on Monday morning. Best to do this before the others arrive, say at 6:30 a.m. He brought me back to my car. When I was about to leave him, he kissed me and said, "Thank you." It was everything I hoped for. You are simply the best, exactly what I imagined, and I look forward to many more repetitions. I could only watch with wide eyes as he continued, "Now I have your consent. I intend to have sex with you anytime I want. And you will comply with my wishes. After tonight, I know that you will obey my desires, and you will definitely like it." It was not a question. Too stunned to respond, I left him and went home to my husband. My head was spinning from the business opportunity that had just presented itself to me. Now looking back, I'm ashamed to admit that what I had just done to deserve it was forgotten, transferred to the part of my brain that had no conscience, the part that was ready to accept what he said. It's just business. The end justifies the means. As I expected, John was supportive of me following my dreams with what I had to earn. He even agreed to reduce his work commitments so he could be more involved with our children. Now that they were older, he could take care of their needs while I did my work. He said he could sort out childcare and later their after-school clubs, etc. Of course, I didn't tell him about one important condition that I agreed to. One thing I decided was that I needed to regain some control over Grant. How dare he tell me that he will take me whenever he wants? I would have talked to him as soon as I walked in on Monday. I would have let him know that sex with him would be on my terms. Part of me, I think, was honest enough to know that I would eventually give in to him, and so I accepted it. We just had to be careful. So it was bright and early Monday morning when I began what was to be the most amazing week for me. Grant was at his desk when I arrived, so I started explaining to him that what we did on Friday was wrong. You can't just demand sexual favors to satisfy yourself. That's all I had time to say when he interrupted me. Take off your dress. His words stopped my flow. I wasn't sure what I had just heard. Now, take it off now. His eyes were locked on mine as he moved toward me, moving with animal speed to enfold me in his arms, his lips preventing anything but a moan from escaping. I felt all my resistance weaken before he retreated. What don't you understand? Your training has already begun. I want to see your body now. What could I do? My dress ended up on the floor. He looked at my nakedness with a satisfied smile. So, what were you talking about? I tried to resist. I really resisted, but the words would not come out of my mouth. He threw me over his knee and spanked me, really spanked my bare bottom and even made me count each spank. Tears of pain streamed down my cheeks for the first few minutes. And then it happened. I went crazy with desire, begging him to take me. He completely dominated me and, to my shame, I loved every second of it. When he was done, we cleared out with only a few minutes left before the rest of the staff arrived. As soon as Natalie arrived, Grant and I met with her to sign my new employment contract, etc. I could tell by the look on Natalie's face that she was fully aware of the deal I had made with Grant, but she didn't say anything about it, at least not then. As soon as the rest of the staff arrived, they were informed of my promotion and new responsibilities. The only surprise that surprised me was that Cindy was no longer part of the team. Natalie informed us that she had resigned immediately. I was never meant to find out for real, but I suspect I took her place as Grant's new toy, and that's why she left. I spent most of the day clearing out my desk, handing over everything I was working on to my old team. I didn't spend any more time alone with Grant that day. Early Tuesday morning found me again in Grant's office, this time barely protesting. I didn't seem to like the man, but I certainly liked what he did to me, and to my shame, I found that I now looked forward to working under him in every way. I took over what used to be his desk, as he preferred to work in the easy chair located in the bay window niche. We discussed the projects he was working on, and he divided them up, advising me what I should do with the ones I was allocated first. As we were closing at the end of the day, he informed me that I would need an overnight bag on Thursday as we were visiting a client and would need to stay overnight. We were going to have fun, so he suggested that I would need a cocktail dress. John took it all in stride, just as I expected when I told him about the overnight trip. He didn't bat an eyelid even when he saw what I was packing. "Do you have to be attractive?" he asked, while I folded my sparkly dress. I think this will be a big part of my new job," I replied with a smile. Once my bag was ready, I stripped down and tried to give my husband enough love to last him until the weekend. Our trip and meeting with the client went well. We checked into the hotel. I was not surprised to find that only one room was booked. What I didn't expect was that it was in my name. "If John calls and asks for your number, he won't get an unpleasant surprise," Grant explained in response to my questioning glance as we rode up the elevator. The client was pleasant company, and I could say I made the right impression. Grant definitely seemed pleased when we eventually returned to our room. We were up late, so we were in bed when I called John to check in and make sure the kids were okay and ready for school. Grant behaved well during my short call, although his fingers circled one of my extremely sensitive nipples. I don't know how I managed not to laugh. As my training continued and the novelty wore off, the demands, Granta. My body weakened a little. Impromptu classes in the office became less and less frequent. We always slept together while traveling. I adjusted my work hours to free up the afternoon on Friday. We all finished at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, and I spent that afternoon at his apartment. Grant seemed happy with the arrangement, and John's desire for me never waned, so the result was that I was an extremely sexually satisfied woman. For his part, John seemed content with the life we shared. I never turned him down, on the other hand. He really enjoyed his leading role with the children. Obviously, we were on holiday together as a family, although I had to work overtime to make sure Grant could cope without my help while I was away. 2 years of training seemed to fly by, and Grant announced that he would no longer be in the office every day. Privately, he made it clear to me that he needed to stay in touch with the business, so I would still have to spend Friday afternoons with him. And if I needed his help on overnight trips, which I often did for obvious reasons, he would go with me. Working with Natalie and fulfilling my obligations to Grant, I grew the business over the next 10 years. Life was good, my family was growing up and happy. One day, towards the end of the day, Natalie came into my office and sat in a niche by the window. She smiled and said, "We need to talk." I closed my folder and joined her in the comfortable chairs. "How are things going between you and Grant?" Then she answered my surprised look. "It's okay. I always knew about you two. I congratulate you on keeping your agreement very carefully. I'm sure no one here knows what you and Grant are doing. How long do you want this to last?" My puzzled and surprised expression brought a smile. She continued, "I think he loves you. He definitely needs you." She met my even more surprised gaze. "You know he will never come between you and John." Unfazed, she continued, "I've never seen him so happy. But if you want to break up with him, maybe now is the right time." I felt my initial bewilderment give way to horror at this proposal. The thought of ever giving up Grant had never crossed my mind until she mentioned it. Yes, as a person, he was still the same handsome, arrogant, cocky, vain, and arrogant man I had always known. But he was my longtime lover, and it had been too long to give up on him, so I guess I kind of love him too. His dominant nature and inventive mind means I still crave what we do. He doesn't do much of the business at all, so he doesn't have any influence on me in that regard. He's a real silent partner now. But when he and I are together, I'm not silent at all. He still has everything it takes to make me ask for his attention. That's why I continue to do it, and why I will never voluntarily give it up. I hesitantly asked Natalie if she thought he was getting bored with me. Natalie knew me so well. She always knew how to read me. So she smiled as she answered, "No, quite the opposite. We both saw something special in you, and we were right. The years that we worked together testify to this. But perhaps changes are coming." She looked thoughtful for a few moments, then quickly added, "Invite Grant here tomorrow. We need to hold an emergency board meeting. I need to discuss something important." Without waiting for an answer, she left the office. The three of us sat down at the table in the meeting room. Natalie broke the silence. "I want to retire. It's time for me." Grant and I looked at each other. She continued, "We have a business proposal, an offer that will benefit all three of us. I want us to accept it. The offer is strictly limited in time. I must inform my partners the answer in an hour." She presented us both with a document detailing the proposal. I understood why she would want to agree. It was an exceptionally good offer. Our team will be retained by the new owner with improved benefits. The buyer will install their own manager, so that's the most will affect me specifically. My advantage is that my share of the purchase price will allow me to retire without having to work. Grant looked at me. "You're the youngest. I don't think you've planned to retire yet. I suppose you could negotiate a position with the new owner, but..." I held Grant's gaze for a moment, then turned my attention to Natalie. They were waiting for me to say something. "I see that from your point of view, the offer is too good to refuse. You and the company have given me so much, and now I'm glad to give it up to return to my family." I saw a dark shadow pass over Grant's eyes and continued, "And so I approve of it, but now I have a condition." They both fidgeted in their seats, waiting for me to find the words. "I enjoyed every day spent here with you and the whole team. I am proud of my achievements and glad that I played a role in the success of the company." My serious expression turned into a smile as I continued, "I also have an ideal family, a husband whom I love and who loves me. My wonderful children are mainly thanks to my husband. Now I can enjoy the reunion and more active communication with them. Of course, you know how important my family is to me, But do I really want to give up my job here completely? I left it hanging, and then I was sure I had their full attention. But, to quote what was said to me many years ago, it's just business. As I repeated Grant's words from our past, I met his gaze and saw him smile. I stood up from my seat, then straddled him, pressed my lips to his for a long moment, then finished. Retired or not, I paused for effect. I will still have sex with you. I turned to look at Natalie and said, slightly out of breath, sorry, I know he's your brother, but I can't resist a handsome, arrogant, demanding bastard. I made a deal with the devil, a compromise that led to years of lies, cheating, but in return, I got great sex from him, and I never want it to end. He is a part of my life, and what we have in common means a lot to me. Natalie didn't say anything. She just smiled, then picked up her purse and left Grant and I for our private negotiations. We sold the company, and a month later, I started a new chapter in my life. Overall, John seemed happy to see me home more often, but looked puzzled when I got dressed, ready to go out that first Friday lunchtime. I thought you retired? Oh, sorry. Didn't I say that my special skills are still needed, so my services have been kept for 1 day a week, although sometimes I may need to travel. I smiled sweetly and walked past him. I have to go. Don't worry. I'll be back soon. It's just business. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one.